Hello guys and gals, Bored now back with you for another new horror movie review. On this video I will be talking about the new Shudder original. It is simply called Host. So yes, this is brand new, it literally hit today or dropped, whatever those crazy kids tend to say. And Shudder original, so the first Shudder original film I've reviewed on this channel. It won't be the last because they are starting to really pump out content, their own original content, and a fair bit of it looks like it's worth covering. But so this is on Shudder now. What was I going to say about it? I've lost my train. I apologise. This is so rubbish. But yeah, the unique thing about it, the kind of gimmick of it, is that it is the first movie to be shot over Zoom, or at least the first movie that I know of. So it's a supernatural horror premise, but the whole thing is shot entirely over Zoom. So a really contemporary thing for them to do, a really modern experiment. I think there's obviously been similar ideas in horror movies recently when you think about Unfriended and various movies like that. So obviously some of the stuff you see in this movie isn't really that unique, but obviously the twist on it is that it was filmed over Zoom, so there's certainly differences going into it. Yeah, I remembered what I was going to say. What I was going to say is that in case you don't know what Shudder is, you've never heard of it before, it is basically a streaming service which is, I guess, like the horror equivalent of Netflix. And it's been around for a couple of years now, I want to say. I'm not too sure. I think I've subscribed to it in the last couple of years. And it does have some good content, actually. I think it has a mixture of stuff. They do their own documentaries. There's kind of like cult sci-fi stuff on there as well. But just to mention it, because obviously if you are of the horror persuasion, it's maybe worthwhile subbing to, or well, subbing isn't the right word, but having a subscription to. I think it's about $5.99 a month, so it's pretty good value for that. I'd say there's probably quite a bit you wouldn't have seen up there. But yeah, this is a new horror original, and the basic plot setup is quite simple. A group of 6 friends during lockdown get together for one of their weekly Zoom chats, and you have the character of Hayley, who normally organises a quiz at this time, but she decides to do something a bit different. She actually arranges for a medium to take part in their weekly get together. So she hires, or whatever the term may be, this medium who comes in, and they do basically like a seance sort of thing. So you get a typical supernatural type plot where weird things start happening, except it's all done over Zoom, and that's the basic setup. So I will go into a few spoilers. I won't spoil too much. I just give my general feelings and 1 or 2 examples. And I think on the whole I'm pretty positive. I quite enjoyed it. It was a solid kind of concept, and I think the way they use the format of Zoom and the technology and just the space, this kind of ambiguous sort of eerie sort of feel of looking into people's lives, looking into their houses, and the way there were certain visual tricks. I thought that was all well done. Obviously, because of it being shot on Zoom, it did feel, very authentic. And you start off with obviously Hayley setting up the chat and that in the morning, so we see her switch the computer on. We also see her wander around the house, get ready. So So it's kind of does peep into that side of thing, someone actually getting ready for like a Zoom chat. And yeah, it's obviously very authentic because you hear all the rumbling sort of sounds. And at one point, like, she has to go and let someone in, but I think it was one of the other, like, Zoom people. I didn't quite get that. Like, maybe they live in the same building or something, but she seemed to be outside with her laptop. And as I said, then you get the supernatural stuff. Um, so I think it's a solid movie. It's an odd one to review and to really judge because the gimmick is such a big part of it. And I think because of the gimmick being distracting, it's it's sort of hard to come down on how good or how bad it is. For example, it's hard to really judge how good the acting was. I mean, I think it was good. I thought they seemed really natural, but at the same time, because that is the gimmick and they are kind of really doing it or as close to real as possible. There was obviously a script and what have you, but I think it's very easy for them to get into the mood of things when you're doing this sort of format, um, rather than something which is like completely sort of made up sort of thing. Um, so I thought that again, it's kind of hard to judge a film like this when it comes to acting. At first, I did find the characters quite annoying. I thought they were kind of a bit too perky, a couple of them, but I guess that felt quite true to life. I think, obviously, I wondered if they might sort of satirize that a bit, or it might be this sort of horror thing where, yeah, they're kind of douchebags and they kind of then you get to enjoy them having bad stuff happening to them. But it didn't really follow through with that. I mean, that it did settle down where over time they were mostly okay. I mean, I think Haley was quite likable. There were a couple of others who were okay. I don't think the characters really stood out, but then that's not the point of the movie. I will say the one character that really bugged the shit out of me was Teddy. Luckily, he's not in the film too much, but he's actually really annoying. He just seems like this very sort of phony, kind of over the top masculine type of guy. Um, and there are moments like that when the characters do become quite annoying, but I think most of it feels quite natural. I guess I wondered if there could be a bit more to the characters, but for the type of film it is, it doesn't really matter. And as I said, I think the performances seem quite natural. Um, because I think this does get into certain areas and brings up certain just these sort of kind of in-between or sort of just really curious questions about online culture, because at various times, like when the seance woman gets introduced, I mean, they come up with this drinking game, which is every time she says astral plane, they take a drink, which I've got to admit I would probably take part in that. That's pretty funny. But you have stuff like with the Gemma character, for example, where she starts like playing a gag, like she goes into like this whole routine where she makes up a story about this guy Jack who she went to school with, and she pretends that he's like contacted her by seance, and that she does this whole acting out thing where he's got her by the shoulder, and that turns out to be a prank. And it's all funny because like the seance woman, I forget her name now, Sienna or something like that, gets disconnected at one point, and then later on when she comes back on, she obviously doesn't know it's a prank. So I quite like when Haley turns it around on Gemma and says, because the woman asks, hey, could it have been Jack, sort of thing. She's talking to them over the phone, I think, but yeah, Haley's like, yeah, Gemma, why don't you tell us? Could it have been Jack? So basically, Gemma makes up this whole story about it being this guy she knew who then committed suicide, and but I think it's playing with this idea of when you see people online and social media and stuff, and obviously it sort of goes into politics now. That what is real, what is a joke, what is sincere, what is just them playing to the cameras, what's a joke. And obviously I think that's something this film makes me think of, because it's this idea of it's very hard to act completely natural when it is a group sort of thing, and you're meeting up in social media, and there is a certain degree of a performance, even though this does feel quite natural, like six friends just getting together. And there's certain little bits, like at one point you have the character of Rodina and her boyfriend sort of in the background, and at one point she like pauses the sound and they have a fight off in the background. And yeah, then like the others are like commenting on the problems in their relationship as I touch the camera. But stuff like that, I guess it gets into like how much should we share on social media, or yeah, just this idea of opening up your life. I guess that part felt a bit contrived just because it's a bit coincidental then they happen to have a fight while the camera was on, but I think it works for what they're going for. What else am I going to say? I think as a horror it works quite well. I do like some of the visual moments. I quite like at one point Caroline gets worried about her dad because of lockdown. Her and her dad are living together, so I quite like her frantically searching around the house, moving around the house, searching for her dad. But this is another part where they really go for the gimmick, because she takes the computer with her, partly because her friends are concerned and they want her to keep the computer so that they can make sure she's okay. But she's searching around and she goes into the attic at one point, and that's a good sort of horror visual, her moving into the darkness and us watching her move into the darkness. And there's kind of jokes on that, because at one point, I can't remember if it's Caroline, it's one of them, it might have been her actually, but after they've had this first real shock, she literally takes the computer to pee with. It's like, yeah, I'm not being left alone after what's just happened. But there are definitely some good horror set pieces. There's a scene where Emma has a glass, and she's obviously been drinking wine or something, and the glass randomly smashes while they're talking or something. So I think that's one unique thing about the Zoom setup for this film, because you've got them on different screens, and at various times you'll have at one point Haley and Gemma start fighting just because of there's this kind of plot detail where the seance tells them that you caused Gemma making up the fake person actually caused this demonic demon. It became she sort of summoned him. So you have a fight between her and Haley's saying this is your fault, and Haley gets really frustrated with Gemma just for mucking about sort of thing, which I probably would as well, to be fair. But Anyway, yeah, there's this cool moment where Emma's glass like randomly smashes. So I do like, because you've got the multi-screen format, this sense of anything could happen at any time in any one of these screens. You know, it's quite jungled up and quite unpredictable like that. So there's definitely good horror set pieces and moments. I mean, it plays with the technology, as I said, because near the end of the film, like Emma, I think it's Emma, has one of like these stupid little like filter things where you can put funny faces on people, and that kind of gets jumbled up, or that gets used as like a horror type set piece, because when something crazy happens, one of them thinks, yeah, Emma, stop messing about, basically think it's her doing it. It does get kind of silly towards the end where things just go a bit crazy, because at one point Teddy's girlfriend is suddenly hoisted up in the air by a demonic force, and stuff like that I think is kind of goofy and cliched. And I think the ending was my least favourite because of that sort of going into sort of cliche sort of eras. I think it just got to the point where they had to do something where it got to like the big sort of final set pieces. Actually, probably my favourite moment like that was where they're all trying to call Rodine because they're worried about her. Like, she's turned her sound off, I think, on her computer, and I think she's searching for her boyfriend because she lives with her boyfriend, and they all shout at the computer. They all try to get her attention, and she finally sees them, and she comes back and she's like, what? And then the boyfriend literally drops out of the attic behind her. I think that was the best jump moment of the whole film. So I think my main problems are just the fact that the gimmick is quite distracting, which I guess was always going to be the way, and just the fact that the actual supernatural plot is quite cliched. It is, you've been there, seen this stuff before. It's just so happens and it's done over Zoom, and I think you're always questioning, well, is this just a cheap way to scare you rather than, yeah, actually, I don't know, do it more traditional where it's like built up tension and stuff, and it almost feels like then it's quite easy to scare people just because it's in this format. But they commit to the premise, and there are some good horror moments, some good set pieces, as I said. Rob Savage is the director, and overall solid stuff. It is a hard film to really rate and judge. I suppose in a way, as I said, there's not that much new stuff here than you haven't seen in similar horror movies. Just 2 or 3 little moments. I do like actually that in the end credits are played out over Zoom. So it's done in the style of like a Zoom sort of like menu where you actually have the credits scrolling down. So that's pretty cool. And I guess this is a rare film where it really wouldn't work on the cinema screen. You sort of have to watch this on your laptop. So there you have it. It's on Shudder now. I'll post actually a link to Shudder in the description in case you're not aware of it, you want to check it out. But solid stuff. I'll give it 6 out of 10. I think overall it was a worthwhile film to watch. Maybe not amazing, but I certainly think they pulled it off quite well. And yeah, 6 out of 10 is where I land on it. It's worth checking out. So that is my review of Host, the new Shudder original. I will be back soon with more horror movie reviews. I'm going to be returning to the Halloween franchise with Halloween 5, so that review should be coming up soon. Probably do another Shudder film as well soon, so plenty coming up on the channel. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.